Okay, hi Poppy. So let's get started. I'm going to ask you first of all, this is what I ask everybody. Are you well, actually?
I would say that I am the wellest I probably have ever been.
That's great.
I feel, yeah.
And how can you describe that feeling, or can you describe that feeling?
Yeah, I think I can actually because I've been thinking about it so much recently. And what it feels like in my body is it's a level of calm, even though things are always changing, things are constantly transforming. The future is uncertain. But for the first time, I feel in my entire life, my mind has got to a point where it can kind of coax itself back from that kind of chaos, that externalizing, that worry, that fear, which of course still exists 100%. It's still there, these little flickers of the opposite of trust.
Mhm.
But there's just something has happened within me that has kind of, it's almost like this reconnection to my North Star, I guess. It's
Mm.
easier to find that place of power and stillness and peace within the chaos.
That's so great, especially now, when things are pretty chaotic. And can you tell me a little bit about your journey to that point? Or, kind of when did you start having an interest in that kind of level of well-being, finding that North Star, that inner power?
Hmm. Well, I think so. It began just under 10 years ago. So, about 10 years ago, I've always been a highly anxious person. I'm a highly sensitive person, so I feel a lot. I feel what's going on around me. I feel the emotions of others. I feel the emotions and energetic experiences of the collective in a more kind of general sense. And I have had to work very hard to strengthen my energetic field and my mind and my body actually, so that I can be present in my experience without getting sucked into the narratives of people and places around me.
And as a Reiki practitioner, I mean, you're picking up a lot of other people's stuff. So is it through your practice as a Reiki master that's helped you to know how to set those sort of energetic boundaries, or is there something else you've sort of dived into to work out how to do that?
I would say that Reiki was definitely the gateway for me. It was, I think, yeah, I would not be where I am emotionally, mentally, energetically if it wasn't for Reiki.
Amazing. What brought you to Reiki? Was there like a one moment, or was it a kind of a sort of slow discovery?
I think it's a really common journey for a lot of people who find themselves in this kind of work, which is I was really struggling. I was working and doing all the things, had a boyfriend, living my life, living in London. And then my grandmother died, and then me and my partner split up, and things just started to change. And I suppose I hit rock bottom. I was just frazzled. I wasn't sleeping. I could barely eat. I was so worried all the time about the future, the uncertainty of the world. And then a friend of mine suggested that I do my Reiki training. She said, "Oh, I did this thing last week. You should do it. It's amazing." And I just booked myself straight on that course. And I'd never experienced anything like that. I don't think I might have been to a yoga class before, but walking into that community hall somewhere in the depths of North London was my first experience of meeting spirit in a conscious way.
Amazing. And actually, I've just realized some people who will be listening to this might not know what Reiki is. Could you give us a little insight into what Reiki is?
Sure. So Reiki is universal life force energy. It is the energetic frequency that exists within every living thing on the planet. It ultimately exists within water, within fire, within animals and plants and us. It's this understanding that within every cell, within every atom, because energy always moves, it's always moving. And That's great. We want it to move. It's not supposed to stay the same. But Reiki is the understanding of this concept of life force energy and the ability to amplify and impregnate atoms and cells with Reiki. So everything is Reiki, and we have the capacity to amplify Reiki within the thing or within the self by conscious thought, by placing our hands on or around another person. So Reiki tends to move through the top of the head, the crown, and down the body and out of the palms of the hands. And so it's energy, it's universal life force energy.
Is it a little bit like chi and like prana? Similar?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Every culture has a different word for it. So the Hindus call it chi. Christians call it light, actually. I have
Mm.
friends who have family members in the church, and they have it's Reiki, but it's called giving light, which is basically when you put your hands on another person. And I suppose it ties in with that the healing hands thing.
Yeah, 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 100%. And where does Reiki as a practice originally? Is it Japanese Reiki?
Yeah, so it was discovered, Reiki as we know it was discovered in the 1920s by a man called Dr. Usui, who um, who was Japanese. He was a monk and then delved into the teachings of Christ because he wanted to understand how Jesus healed. There are thoughts that because he translated scriptures written by Buddha's disciples as Buddha wrote, which was Sanskrit, he taught himself Sanskrit.
Wow.
And so there is also a theory that this energy medicine, it actually originates from Tibet.
Cool. Wow. So yeah, like a bit like yoga, I guess it probably goes further back than we know.
Absolutely.
That's so amazing. And I mean, can you practice Reiki on yourself?
Yes.
And how would you do that? Or how
So,
do you do that, I should ask?
that's a great question. So, anybody who is attuned to Reiki, but bear in mind, a lot of people already feel like they channel or they have that the capacity to move amplified life force energy through their body. But within the kind of Reiki framework, anybody who has been attuned to Reiki level 1, which is the first stage of Reiki, you center yourself at your practice within the center of your practice. And so every day it's suggested after doing your Reiki level 1 that you practice on yourself. And what that might look like is placing your hands on your body.
Hmm.
And more modern Reiki focuses on the seven main chakras.
Hmm.
There's a kind of weaving with the kind of ancient Hindu systems of healing as well. But Reiki in its most original form did not work with the chakras because obviously it was kind of cultivated and used mostly in Japan.
Hmm.
So yeah, it is really just a case of placing your hands on your body and breathing deeply. And the understanding as a Reiki practitioner is that energy, life force energy, moves through you with every breath. And when you put your hands on yourself or somebody else or a plate of food or a plant or a cat or anything that has life force energy in it, you are channeling amplified energy to the cells, to the self.
Amazing. So as well as sort of self Reiki, if you like, what kind of keeps you in a state of wellness now? Sort of like your day to day, and then maybe bigger things that happen over a longer period of time, like maybe cyclically, for example, and seasonally.
Mm. That's a great question. And obviously, there are things like yoga for me as a highly sensitive person is a non-negotiable. And it's taken me like years to get to that point. But it's finally anchored. It is a
Mhm.
non-negotiable. Whether it's 5 minutes or an hour and a half practice in a studio. Yoga is so nourishing, as you know. Cyclically being in nature is always going to be one of the most healing things we can do for ourselves. Being outside, getting natural light into our eyes, drinking water. This is something that I really find, depending on how much water I'm drinking in a day, can really impact my emotional well-being. So as someone who did not drink a lot of water, if any water growing up, drinking good quality water. So I always try and get my water from springs. If that's possible, tap water, even though it's such a blessing to have access to clean water, is full of heavy metals, heavy toxins that are very hard for the body to digest. They can block the kidneys. Kidneys in Chinese medicine relate to fear. And so, there are all these little things that can help us feel calmer in our bodies.
Mhm.
But just as you were asking that question, I suppose, we all kind of know what we should be doing. We see people sharing their journeys on social media and things like that. But at this moment in time, one of the things that came through as you were talking was that boundaries. As a highly sensitive person, I was born into this world with absolutely no boundaries. And it's taken me about 35 years to say no
Mhm.
and to honor my energy. And if something is not working for me, then I will make or take the steps to lovingly move away from that
Yes.
thing.
It's interesting. I think that's probably one of the main challenges that we as sort of teachers or healers or coaches or whatever face, because our job, if you like, or our purpose is to help people. So you feel telling someone no, it feels like it's going against what you're supposed to be doing. But of course, the saying goes, you can't pour from an empty cup. And then, I said just then, like teachers, healers, whatnot, but really anyone, anyone who's got to give of themselves, you have to manage that, because you're not, you, as much as we'd like to think we've got infinite energy, wouldn't that be nice? We do have to restore it. So yeah, I agree, I totally agree with you on boundaries. I'm still learning,
Hmm.
but it's coming slowly.
Yeah, slowly, babe. Every day is a learning opportunity, and boundaries change as well. And
Yeah,
what boundaries might look like for you might look different for someone else. And so when you're
absolutely.
trying to find your own experience and what works for you and what boundaries actually even mean to you, it's such an intimate journey, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I actually wanted to ask about water because, how would, okay, if someone hasn't got access to, well, spring water, I mean, would people filter it? Would they use charcoal in their water? What's a really simple way to
Mm.
get water that's not full of heavy metals? Because obviously that's a very real problem.
Yeah, it's a really great question and one that I have spent years and years and years studying to try and understand. I mean, of course, filtration is great, and you can get filters that take out some of those heavy metals and heavy, chlorine, things like that. But what happens then is that you're left with dead water.
Mm.
So a really, really simple way to re-energize your water is to put a tiny little bit of salt in it, a little bit of Himalayan salt, good quality salt, just a little pinch. I think if you can taste it, you've probably put in too much. But what the salt does is it's a mineral, of course, so it helps the body absorb the water. Because you might drink a lot of water, but if you're peeing a lot,
Mm.
it might be a sign that your kidneys are blocked. Therefore, the water is not actually being absorbed into the body. And it's just so you still might be hydrated. I see that a lot, or you might feel hydrated.
That's interesting. Can you, out of interest, when you're practicing Reiki on someone, can you tell when you're sort of putting your hands on them, or when you do Reiki, do you put your hands directly on, or is there a little bit of a gap above the body?
Mm. So, from what we know about traditional Reiki, it was hands off. So the hands would be about six centimeters off the body.
Okay.
I personally am a very touchy-feely person, and I also think at this day in time, touch is so important. It
Mhm.
helps us come into our bodies, and you might not have been touched in a few days. Who knows? Maybe you're super busy and you just haven't had that time, or seen a friend, or and been held, been hugged. And we respond so beautifully to touch. And so I am very much a touchy feely person. I still work on the emotional and the energetic bodies around the body. But
Mm.
for me, I definitely bring in some of that touch to the shoulders and the chest and the hips. Yeah, just helping bring people back down.
Yeah. And with that touch, can you, I mean, are you able to tell, say, if someone's kidneys are blocked, for example, can you tell just by touching them?
Um, yeah, I can pick up a lot of subtle messages from the body because I believe that the body is always communicating with us. And part of
Mhm.
my job is to interpret some of those messages and then feed them back to the person. So it's not necessarily about, me healing them, it's about me reflecting back to them some of the things that they probably know deep down, but yeah, they might just need
Yeah,
a little bit.
that's so amazing that yeah, and I agree with you about but you're acting almost as a bit of a mirror to
Yeah,
like a really honest mirror to them.
absolutely.
Um and do you like when you were talking a little bit about being cyclical and do you sort of eat what's in season? Is that also part of your well-being?
I really try. I really, really try. The reality is where you are depends on, the quality of food you have access to.
Of course.
There are so many factors that can play into that. But yeah, I try and eat as my ancestors did, actually. And a friend of mine, and one of my Reiki masters, she told me recently that actually it's really important to eat a relatively similar diet to your grandmother, to your mother's mother,
That's
because
so interesting.
yeah, I know. Oh my goodness, it gives me goosebumps thinking about it. But because when your grandmother was pregnant with your mother at 4 months of age, your mother created all of her cells, all of the eggs that
Yeah.
she would ever have in her life. So
Wow.
you at an egg level, existed within your mother while she was in the womb of her mother.
Wow.
And so when we eat what our mothers ate, that's great. But really, what you want to do is eat what your mother's mother ate because energetically, her imprint is on you.
That is so interesting.
Mm,
I never thought of it like that.
mm.
Wow, I wonder, my grandma's no longer with us, but I think it would have been pretty meat and two veg. In my, yeah.
Yeah.
What's your ancestry, Poppy?
There is a bit of debate around it. On my father's side, there's Irish blood, Celtic blood. There's also some Romany blood. I think I was told by an aunt that we have our ancestry were Spanish travelers who made their way from Spain over to Ireland and ultimately landed in South London.
I love that. Just a little detour to South
Oh,
London.
God, God, who knows? And then, like on my mother's side, they were my mother's parents, my mother's grandparents were farmers, so from Devon,
Ah,
Totnes area.
oh wow,
Yeah.
cool.
And then
So you
pre
kind
that,
of want to be by the sea then. It makes sense that you're living by the sea right now.
yeah, I said in my last house, I said the next place I want to live is by the ocean, and I'm probably about 5 minute walk from the beach right now.
Amazing. Do
Mm.
you ever do cold dips?
I do. I haven't done it in Brighton yet. I'm a bit like, well, I'm not quite in Brighton. I'm kind of in one of the suburbs just past Hove, but
Yeah,
I haven't quite made it into the ocean here. But I do, if I see a body of water and I can get in it, I wouldn't call myself a swimmer, but I would call myself a cold water dunker.
great.
I
Yeah,
get out.
amazing. That's so cool. And you mentioned a bit earlier about people share quite abundantly on social media about their wellness journeys and whatnot. Is there anything that you, is there any sort of a suggested wellness protocol you've seen and you've just thought, nope?
I suppose something that is coming up for me at the moment. Actually, I went to a drumming circle yesterday and people were talking about urine therapy. And listen, I'm open to a lot of things, There's absolutely no judgment in this place. No judgment in this space, or that is definitely what I aspire to cultivate. But at this moment in my life, I don't feel the call to drink my urine.
What's the benefit?
Loads apparently. Apparently stops your hair go. This is just from what I heard some people speak about last night. Apparently it stops your hair going grey. It's really good for your wrinkles. So you drink your first pee in the morning and your last one in the evening, and then you rub it on your body and you put it on your face and your skin. And again, no judgment. And I actually know people who've done it and swear by it. But I was just listening and observing, and I thought, man, good on you. But I'm not quite there yet.
You do you, yeah. It's that thing, isn't it? It's like you enjoy that. I'm good. I'll hear about the benefits. That's so funny, yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh. It is kind of I mean, it's funny because you would think that would be your body's waste product, but maybe, yeah. I mean, it
That's
must you just must smell a bit, no? After you put it all over your face and
suppo-
body.
supposedly not. And it turns out the lady sitting next to me actually had it all over her and she didn't smell, which was quite interesting. But she said that when she had it, she was in her 60s, when she had her first child, like 40 years ago, that her midwife had told her to put pee on her stitches because your pee is sterile. And
Cool.
I thought that was amazing that, midwives are kind of sharing that type of knowledge. I've never heard that before, and I've got friends who are midwives and doulas and things.
Mm.
So I thought that was really interesting. And the body is such an incredibly intelligent thing. No, it doesn't surprise me that our waste products are actually
Yeah.
have massive healing benefits.
Yeah, it's very true, isn't it? I mean, look, I like a balance. I mean, I love natural medicine and I love natural approaches. I think there's space for both, so you've got your homeopathic, your allopathic medicine. But then with the sort of allopathic stuff, if you like, it's with a lot of what we've been told, like I said, the word like waste product is not, it's too simplistic, I reckon.
Mm.
Um, and that's why that's why I find you so fascinating in the way you approach your health, because everything you're doing is so simple, really, because it's just connecting back into nature and just immersing yourself in the most kind of raw, um, uh, like state of being, I guess. If I think that's, is that a good way to describe? I think that's how I perceive your
Yeah,
sort of approach.
absolutely. I think, I've for 10 years I have funneled, I've worked really hard to be able to train and invest in my self-development and my spiritual development and my skill set and all of these things. But ultimately, health and well-being shouldn't cost $1 million. And I think that is so sad. The ideology that, you only have access to certain things if you have money. And we live in a world of terrible inequality. And so, and we're surrounded by healing tools. Our breath, like you would know so much with
Mm,
the amazing work that you do. The breath, movement, we're not necessarily told this stuff in school. Not necessarily our parents know about the healing benefits of.
mm,
And also, I think when it comes to healing, we can bypass the simplicity, and I think that's also why a lot of people might not really trust Reiki yet or energy healing. Is because this is just my own thoughts, but it's because it is so simple. It almost makes no sense to the kind of complexity of the mind. What do
mhm,
you mean? I put my hands on you and I feel better. It makes no sense.
mhm.
But I'm all about the simplicity. I just want to strip it back. I want to strip myself back. I want to get to the
Mm,
root of of love, I guess, the root of life and well-being, because you can have all the money in the world, but if you are not happy in your heart, what is the point? And then there are people who have so little, on a kind of more physical, tangible level, but they know love so deeply.
yeah, absolutely. Oh, I think, yeah, it sounds like, Reiki and yoga are very, there's a similarity there in that I know, for example, with yoga, it's, of course, you go to the classes, you might buy a yoga mat and pay for a yoga retreat, but really the healing of it comes from actually stripping away. It's actually unlearning and it's undoing things that have been put in place just to confuse and complicate. So it seems like Reiki is the same. So it's always like you don't really need to acquire anything. It's
Mm.
actually just uncovering what's already there.
Yeah. And I used to have a million crystals. I had a million sound instruments. I had a million oils. I had all the things. And I love all of those things. And I think for me, the past few years, especially kind of through lockdown and stuff, was just about shedding, stripping it all back, because it's also very easy to hide behind your tools.
Of course.
And I think with energy healing, with hands on or off healing, like Reiki or Seishim, what we do here is remember that you are the portal of energy. You are actually your greatest healer. Your body is working every moment of every day to heal itself at a cellular level. And that's what I really hope people remember, the healing capacity of themselves.
Yeah. Wow. That is so, yeah. And it's, yeah, I guess where like big corporations and companies are involved, they don't, that's not what they want to hear. So, because it's got to be about what can I buy to actually achieve this? And actually, at the root of it is probably nothing,
Mm.
apart from obviously, paying you for a service. But really, in terms of, as you say, all the crystals, I mean, look, I love crystals. I have a massive amethyst right here now.
So, so-
Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, look, we've still got the crystals,
yeah,
but
we do.
it's. I guess it's like having what you need to have the foundation. Well, the foundation is you can't see it and touch it.
Yeah, and you're not defined by what you have. That is not what defines you, no matter what a kind of capitalist consumerist society wants you to believe. You are enough. You are enough. Yes, it's amazing to have, beautiful things that you work with, but also when you have so much, it's easy to forget the sacredness of the things. And so, yeah, I guess a big part of kind of decolonizing my practice and myself is showing up in my fullness as myself, and kind of having to move through all of the layers of not good enough, haven't got enough, haven't done enough, all of these things that are put onto us by a society that wants us to constantly search outside of ourselves,
Hmm.
ultimately buy buy stuff to make us feel more, when actually we want to strip, like that's what yoga does, right? It's like strip it back. Yeah, of course, having a mat is an amazing thing.
Yeah.
Yoga mat is amazing. Being able to go to a yoga class is amazing. Paying for a subscription to watch an amazing teacher online is amazing. It's amazing. It's so great. And it's so simple.
Yeah. Yeah. You said the word decolonize there, which is I that's so interesting in the context of wellness. Like how would you well, like, can you elaborate on that a little bit? Because I really like that idea of decolonizing wellness, especially when so many of the practices we use are Eastern practices.
Mm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, it's a really great question. And again, a kind of narrative that I have been internally exploring for the past few years. I think mostly because I was in Australia for so long. And Australia, we have an amazing Aboriginal population who experience huge disadvantages because of a systematically racist system that kind of keeps people um, yeah, in pain and in poverty to some degree. Just to kind of, it's obviously a lot deeper than that, but decolonizing our practice as a straight white woman, it
Mhm.
probably sounds ridiculous, and I'm super aware of that. But I do think it's really important, especially as a white woman in the healing space, to constantly look at their colonizer mindset, and starting with myself. And of course, I teach seishim and reiki. Seishim was practiced supposedly by the ancient Egyptians. It is from those lands. Reiki is from Japan. These are healing systems that are not of my own Celtic ancestry. I try and practice them with the deepest reverence and the deepest respect, and I'm very aware that when Reiki was first gaining in popularity, people outside of Japan were wanting to learn it from the masters, and the Japanese Reiki masters were not keen on that happening because of the sacredness. And yeah, so it's a really interesting conversation. I don't know the answer. I don't know. All I can do is read the books and talk about it, have uncomfortable conversations often, and just meet myself. I think on a really basic level, from my observation, a very kind of white supremacist, is that the right word? White my kind of colonizer mindset is I see something, so I take it and
Yeah.
it's mine.
Mhm.
And that is so wrong. It's like, and it's just about like knowing your tools, knowing the origins. If I'm using sage in a ceremony, like I want to know where that sage has come from. I don't want, I want to know that it comes from a place where indigenous people are benefiting from the sale. If I love cacao. I love cacao, and I've always been a bit skeptical about drinking and serving cacao, though I don't advertise it, but it's something that I tend to do in more intimate ceremonies, because it is so sacred to the people of Ecuador and Venezuela and the Amazon. This is sacred plant medicine. We shouldn't just take it because we like it, because it fits an aesthetic. That is colonizer mindset.
Yeah. Wow, that is so well said. It's taking, yeah, it's like it's taking things out of their context and not giving them the reverence that they are due. And
Mm,
not and I guess like not fully understanding it when something's for an aesthetic and not, yeah, I think the plant medicine stuff, I know very little about it, but it's blown like that, all that stuff's blown up in the last what, 5, maybe 10 years. And you do hear stories, don't you, of people just having a nightmare because they haven't understood the sort of the rites and the traditions of, say, what, like you hear about people, having a complete terrible trip and a disaster on ayahuasca, and then that they're like they upset someone in this, like I think it wasn't like a medicine woman killed by a tourist or something.
wow.
Really, I mean, that's like a terrible, that's the worst case example. But yeah, I think, as you say, just like really understanding the the depth of what you're engaging in. And I guess because you say you're a sensitive person, that sets you up really well for that. I think I feel the same personally. I'm quite sensitive, so yeah, if I always try, and if I'm given some information or something shared with me, I try and be really, really grateful and curious, and have that beginner's mind as well. Like
Mm.
not needing to know everything and not claiming to be an expert on it. I think that's
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and honoring the source, doing what you can with the information that's been shared with you. There's a reason that so many of the sacred teachings were not written down, because it was people were scared they would fall into the wrong hands and be manipulated
absolutely.
and used for not the right thing. And it's really interesting that you touched on plant medicine, because just before, when you asked me about a kind of, I'm going to say fad, but I don't think that's the right word, but just for kind of time's sake, one of the things that I do find a little bit concerning is the kind of gravitational pull of Westerners to plant medicine as a fixer.
Hmm.
As a, I'm not going to change how I eat. I'm not going to talk to a therapist. I'm not going to move my body, but I'm going to start microdosing mushrooms, like sacred plant medicine, have you been used for healing since the beginning of time. I'm going to start, microdosing these mushrooms, and I'm going to be healed.
Mm.
And I see it all the time. And while I have such deep, deep respect for the plants, our plant allies, they surround us. What people don't understand is that also you don't need to just have a massive mushroom trip. Like lavender is a plant ally.
Yeah.
Rosemary is a plant ally. You have plants all around you. But I think that kind of Western mindset is gravitate to the most extreme. I think we're so kind of dopamine infused, especially nowadays with phones and stimulants and just this ability to literally call whatever you need to your house, literally anything.
Yeah.
Have
Yeah.
it within half an hour.
Yeah.
We have forgotten the medicine of softness and of subtleness and of patience, and of the healing journey is ongoing. We will be healing until the day we die, and then we will be reborn and continue to heal, God willing.
Yeah. Yeah.
If
Yeah.
we're reborn with that kind of intention, and we experience and cultivate love in our lives to the best of our abilities, um, healing is a journey. There is not a one fix it, one stop. We're not here like giving you pills to
No,
take the pain away. Healing is about sitting in your pain. It's about witnessing the parts of yourself that you do not want to see because there is too much shame or there is too much guilt or there is too much fear. That is true healing. And this over attachment to the kind of light side of healing is dangerous because people experience the light, and the light is so beautiful and so profound and so potent. But what happens is that it's very easy to kind of maybe slip into a bit of a healing crisis because what goes up must come down.
of course.
And without the light, there is no dark. So if you're experiencing profound light through your healing practice or, dancing or whatever it is, there is a big chance that you will experience some sort of, let's say, darkness or
Yeah, of
heaviness,
course. Yeah,
stagnancy, because life is balance.
absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. It's a bit like the sort of sister science of yoga's Ayurveda, and there are these everything's done by these three doshas or three
Mm,
sort of elements of your constitution. And people are primarily one or two of them, but all of them need to exist for balance. So I
mm.
totally get that. Um, is there something, just to sort of change tack a little bit, is there something you do that sort of boosts your well-being that other people maybe don't know about, or something that's not a classical
Mm.
self-care practice but makes you feel really good that you'd like to share?
Okay. This might be a bit of a classic one, but actually I don't know if anyone does that. Well, some of my clients do because I share it with those who ask. But I'm a big one. I put on music and I dance, and quite often I cry.
Love that.
That is probably one of my biggest, but the biggest parts of my embodiment, my daily embodiment practices. And I love the plinky plonky, beautiful healing music. You know what I mean.
Yeah,
The
yeah, yeah.
yoga playlists. Oh, they're so beautiful. But sometimes if I'm moving through rage or I'm moving through anger or frustration or fear, I will probably put on some drum and bass.
Amazing. I love
Yeah,
that.
it's all about balance, right? Sometimes I will go, I will go out and I will dance. I love tech house. I've always, loved vinyl, and
Yeah,
I'm a house baby, and a funky garage baby and
right.
funky house. But Ibiza, I mean, I don't rave like I used to, but I love it. I
Yeah,
think so much love can be experienced on the dance floor. And
yeah,
so I think that is also my biggest suggestion to anyone is like every day put on your practice does not need to look like anybody else's. These like gorgeous women we see on Instagram, like moving their bodies to this like beautiful tribal music. It can be that for sure, but it can also be like hardcore grime or
yeah,
you know what I mean? Or death metal. If that is your vibe and that helps you move through emotional transitions, own it. You don't need to
absolutely.
be this image of the kind of healed person. It doesn't exist. It's an
Yeah.
illusion.
Yeah, you know what? I wish as you mentioned, it is so gorgeous when you see people doing that perfect dancing and it's all, soft focus and they're in a beautiful flowy outfit. But like occasionally it would be so good to see someone in their pants, just like in a messy t-shirt, just like because I'll do that especially I did that a lot over lockdown. I put a playlist on and just kind of danced around my front room,
Yeah,
boobs all over the place,
yeah. Beautiful.
And it'd be quite fun actually. I mean, look, there might be somebody who already does that, but I think sometimes, and understandably so, because people, they want what they're sharing on social media to look polished, because it's become like that. But yeah, that's why I quite enjoy, she's not really a sort of wellness person, but do you know that woman, Celeste Barber? She's
I'm
sort of,
gonna say her. I knew.
yeah,
Yeah, she's
she does
hilarious.
like those sort of, she'll sort of copy a fashion campaign, and I find that's just brilliant. I really enjoy those. They're silly and they're fun.
I love when she gets her really, really gorgeous husband involved as well.
Her hot husband,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like, come on, babe. Good on you. It's amazing.
Yeah, no, she's
Oh,
great. All right. Well, thank you so much, Poppy, for sharing your absolutely infinite wisdom. Infinite? Infinite, infamous wisdom. Where can we find you? What have you got anything coming up? Yeah, tell us where we can find you. What's your Instagram handle, your website?
So my Instagram handle is School of Light. I kind of don't know what the thing in between the words is, that kind of dash underneath school
Wording
underscore of
underscores.
underscore light.
Amazing. I'm going to put this in like the show notes as well.
Thank
So
you, thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, my website's schooloflight.co.uk, and I'm always doing different things. I'm currently based in Brighton, so I'm preparing to open up clinic to see my one-on-ones again after a little break.
Mhm.
I also teach all over the country, so I teach Reiki, I teach Seishin, I also mentor lots of healers and highly sensitive people, take people out on the land, lots of different offerings, moon
Amazing.
circles, and yeah, beautiful things.
Amazing. Oh, wow. What a treat it's been. And thank
Thank
you
you
so
so much.
much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.